Dolphins fans, we've got the initial 53-man roster. As you likely know by now, it does not include a new running back, that running back by the name of Jonathan Taylor. Fun-filled day. I don't know if fun is the right way actually to describe that. Probably a stressful day for a lot of these guys that were either cut or on the fringe and not knowing what was going to happen to them. But we do have the initial 53-man roster. We're going to talk about that in today's video. Before I get started, I do want to say, keep in mind, this is the initial 53-man roster. There were 1,000 some players that were released today. There's going to be a lot of players added, players that are currently on our team that are subtracted, guys that are on our team that are probably going to get pushed to the PUP or the short-term IR. So while this is the initial 53, it's probably not the 53 that we are heading into week one with against the LA Chargers. Just like we did on the 53-man prediction video, I'm going to throw up a couple of different banners basically saying who made it offensively, defensively. We'll go by who are the surprise cuts, what we can expect. But before I jump into that real quick, got to hear from you. People that you would have loved to see stick that didn't, maybe your practice squad hopefuls, any thoughts you've got on this initial 53-man roster, go ahead, drop them in the comments. Let's kick things off offensively. Quarterback, we're going to probably cruise through this one. There's no big surprises. As we talked about in the prediction for this, potentially you add a veteran in replace of Skylar if the right guy falls to the Dolphins. If they're indeed, I should say, not completely thrilled with Skylar Thompson and they want to carry three quarterbacks, you might look at a veteran quarterback, but at the end of the day, these are the three we're rolling with. Running backs, fullbacks, like I said, no Jonathan Taylor. I did get my hands on the final offer that the Dolphins offered the Colts for Jonathan Taylor. And I initially said the initial offer, as Barry Jackson said, it was kind of a fair offer. I didn't necessarily think that was a fair offer. I will say, though, that the final offer that the Dolphins sent to the Colts today, Tuesday, before the deadline, in my opinion, probably was a fair offer. In my opinion, probably something they should have taken. But man, Jim Irsay, he is going to have it his way or no way at all. And obviously, as you know, he's still an Indianapolis Colts running back. And he's really not even that at this point in time because they kept him on the PUP list, which means he is going to sit out the first 4 weeks, regardless of the whether or not he's traded or not at this point in time. One running back you're not going to see that was cut is Myles Gaskin. He's kind of, I don't want to say run his course with the Dolphins, but man, we've just got so many other guys at this point in time. And the guy that you're going to see on there, a fan favorite over these few preseason games, Chris Brooks, makes the final 50 or the initial 53, I should say. The thing about Chris Brooks, as I'm going to pop out on the screen real quick, the thing about Chris Brooks, great story. I'm glad that he made it. If I had to make a prediction today, though, he kind of feels like probably one of those game day scratch guys, one of those inactive guys, at least for the start of the season. We'll see how things go with Devon Achane and the injury that he is continuing to battle. But just because Brooks made it, I don't necessarily think we're going to see all this instant impact. In my opinion, it's still probably Raheem Mostert's show, the Jeff Wilson show when he is active. Like I said, with Achane, Ahmed's probably going to get that Achane role, at least for the time being, until he gets his legs under him a little bit more there. But just interesting to note, pretty cool story that of the three undrafted free agents that made it on the initial 53, Chris Brooks was one of them. Let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers because Cedric Wilson stuck probably in large part because he restructured that contract. So he's going to stick. A lot of people thought as soon as that news broke that, hey, we are clearing space, we are making way for Jonathan Taylor. Ended up not being the case, at least for now, but he sticks. As we talked about in the prediction video as well with Robbie Chosen, he was cut. You obviously don't see his name there, but keep in mind, we're going to have those guys that are placed on the PUP and the short-term IR. If what I was told on Sunday ends up ringing true, if the Dolphins do in fact want to keep an extra wide receiver, it could very well be Robbie Chosen. So keep your eye on him. He might not be gone for too long. And then the name that did make it, River Craycraft, another fan favorite, another guy that just kind of never sexy, never like the huge downfield chunk yardage, 80-yard like Jalen Waddle type play. But man, a guy that when his number is called, you can rely on. Good in blocking, does a lot of the little things. River Craycraft gets the nod. Chris Coleman was not obviously on on the initial 53 here. However, the hopes are that the Dolphins can land him on the practice squad. You go to tight ends. Holy cow, it's thin. We only kept two guys, Durham Smythe, an undrafted free agent. The second one we'll talk about here, Julian Hill. So you almost got to think that, you know what, if we're going to put a waiver claim in for someone, if we have a plan to add someone, tight end could very well be that position, because the Dolphins actually have Eric Soybert, but they put him on IR. So that doesn't count towards a roster spot since they did it now. However, it means he also is ineligible to play this season unless he gets let go with an injury settlement. But the names you're not seeing on there, Elijah Higgins, Tanner Connor. So maybe you've got practice squad potential with those guys, either one of those guys. But at this point in time, because you're going to see as well that we released Robert Hayes. So we released our 7th rounder in this previous draft and our 6th rounder in Elijah Higgins. We only had 4 picks, and we literally today released 50%. We released half of them. And granted, it's a 6th and 7th rounder. There's never any guarantees. But man, when we have the limited resources and draft capital that we've had recently and kind of continue to have moving forward because of some of the moves that we've made, you got to make these picks count. And granted, maybe there is chance there that we can get these guys back on the practice squad. We'll see how that all plays out. But you can't say it's anything short of disappointing at this point in time, especially with, I thought Elijah Higgins did okay in that first preseason game. And then really in those next couple of games, we just really didn't see much action out of him. Let's move on to that offensive line. The first 5 guys you got listed there are the guys that we're kind of assuming are starting right now. Isaiah Wynn, I think, probably has that left guard spot lined up. But it's interesting because if you look at Alama Uluave, who was cut, and Dan Feeney, who was traded for a late round pick to the Chicago Bears, you're basically rolling without a true center. I mean, Connor Williams, sure, he's got a year of center under his belt. That's not what he played the first 4 years in the NFL. So if you look at our roster, where's the depth at center behind him? Well, Mike McDaniel seems to think it's in the form of a guy, either Lester Cotton or Liam Eichenberg, because Liam Eichenberg's stuck. But the theory is right now, if Isaiah Wynn's starting at left guard, Liam Eichenberg's probably right in that mix for backup center. And I know that's not giving us we're not probably feeling strong about that with one of our weaker units right now. We need to stay healthy. We need it so bad. We need Teron Armstead to be back in such a way right now. Talked about Ryan Hayes getting cut, rumors about him potentially landing on the practice squad. Robert Jones kept. He'll provide depth at left guard when he's healthy, or if Isaiah Wynn is struggling, maybe you can turn to him as well once he is healthy. In my opinion, on the offensive line, biggest surprise was Keon Smith. And I do think that he did a little bit better as the preseason went on, but I also believe that he looked a little bit better at guard than tackle. But interesting crew nonetheless at the offensive line, especially with the moves that we made in the trade of Dan Feeney. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. And you're going to notice some things on the defense. I group these guys a little bit differently than some people in regards to the defensive line, edge rushers, linebackers. Regardless, end of the day, we're talking about the same 53 guys. But the good news from today is Christian Wilkins ended that hold-in. He practiced today, so that kind of means all signs are pointing towards him being done with the holdout. The Dolphins said that they fielded calls throughout the last couple of days for Christian Wilkins. They didn't want to move him, and Christian Wilkins doesn't want to play for anyone else. So by all signs pointing towards him being ready to roll for week 1. But outside of those big 3, it's Brandon Peely. That's your guy. Jalen Twyman let go. Deshaun Hand let go. They were among the guys recently cut. So this team is showing, you know what? If we need a little depth, if we need someone to bring in those snaps, Peely showed enough. And that's that third undrafted free agent that ended up sticking on the team. Moving over to linebacker, man, Channing Tindall survived. I know a lot of people in their predictions didn't have him making it. But the thing is, we'll see if he gets a role this year that's beyond just special teams and being a game day scratch. Love to see him in at least some sort of package. We'll have to see how that goes. But the guys that were cut, Aubrey Miller, AJ Johnson, I know a lot of people want Aubrey Miller on the practice squad. Give him time. It almost feels like he didn't really get a great chance to shine, but keep in mind, those are just the 3 preseason games we watched. They had all off-season OTAs, mini camp, training camp. So I trust the team in this sense. Yeah, we all wanted him to make it. End of the day, you got to realize it probably was a long shot still for him to make it. But you know what? Chance is still out there as a practice squad possibility. Moving on to the edge. So It's thin if you look at it from this sense, but you can also put a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel as an edge rusher as well. So, like I said, some of these guys are a little bit interchangeable. But Mitchell Agude, Garrett Nelson, Cameron Good, all let go. Wouldn't be surprised to see if at least one of those guys land on the practice squad. That's where Mitchell, or not Mitchell Agude, that's where Cameron Good started out last year. I know Agude, I mean, he was just impressed throughout. Nelson had his chances or his opportunities as well. So you got to think maybe at least one of those guys can latch on to the practice squad as well at edge rusher. Because, yeah, we released Malik Reed as well. So, yeah, we're probably a little bit thin on paper with Emmanuel Ogba, though, being able to play that position, Andrew Van Ginkel being able to play that position. Your bread and butter is made by Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. We're not going to take those guys off the field all too often unless we're in a game where it just doesn't quite matter at this point in time, or those guys need a breather and then you rely on one of your top backups anyways. We are moving on to the cornerbacks. So we're all expecting either the PUP or the short-term IR for Jalen Ramsey. And obviously, like we said, that will free up a roster spot as well. Then you've got Nick Needham, who I technically have like 54 guys listed because Nick Needham doesn't count because the Dolphins began with him on the PUP, which means kind of like what we said with Jonathan Taylor. He's going to miss those first 4 weeks. And then the name that you're going to see on this list that we haven't seen all offseason is Calvin Joseph, because he was brought over from the Dallas Cowboys in a deal for Noah Igbenogany. And more so than anything, I mean, I believe Calvin Joseph was a former second rounder of the Cowboys, hasn't really lived up to his billing. It's essentially carbon copy of Noah Igbenogany not living up to his first round billing as well. So the nice thing is Noah Igbenogany's contract was a little bit bigger than Calvin Joseph. So you're basically just kind of shaving some cost with that. Another name that you're not going to see on the cornerback or the safety list is Trill Williams. We all obviously we all really like Trill. We wanted to see him land as well. Maybe he can be a practice squad guy as well. Not sure if he will get if he'll potentially get poached or not. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Would love to see him land back on the practice squad. Get a little bit more time to heal. I mean, think about it. He had more time than a guy like Nick Needham and Brandon Jones to get right. But at the end of the day, it's still just 1 year from a pretty serious knee injury. But more so than anything, I'm kind of just curious to see these top 4 cornerbacks when it comes to week 1. You got Xavier Howard, you got Kader Kohu, and then you got Cam Smith and Eli Apple for my money. I don't think we see Calvin Joseph in much of a role. Maybe he's a special teams kind of guy. Maybe he surprises me, but I'm kind of curious to see who ends up getting the nod at cornerback, especially in week 1, when the first few weeks when we don't have Ramsey, when we don't have Needham. But I tell you what, if Needham's ready to go by week 5 or whatever, what a boost he brings in. He can play slot, and then you can move a guy like Kader Kohu around a little bit. And then when Ramsey comes back, man, it's all systems go, because you got Ramsey who can play boundary, slot. You can move Cam Smith around that way. You can move Kader Kohu around that way. If we can stay healthy and have all those guys at our disposal, November, December, when Jalen Ramsey gets back, man, I'm still pumped up about that signing. Just such a kick to the you know what's that we don't get to start the season with him. And the last thing that we're going to talk about here just briefly is the safeties. Kind of expecting Deshaun Elliott to essentially just kind of fall into that role opposite of Javon Holland right now. Brandon Jones not 100%. You got Elijah Campbell, who made the squad, but he obviously got his injury that's going to keep him out a while in that last preseason game. And then a name you're not going to see listed is Keon Crossan. He's put on IR as well. Same deal as tight end Soybert, where he's just not eligible to play this year. I talked about Campbell. He avoided that season-ending IR for now, so that's nice. And one crazy kind of story from the day was Verone McKinley was essentially told that he was expected to be released. However, the team thought about it a little bit more. I don't know if they got wind of someone being interested in him or were just scared in general that someone might take him. They ended up bringing him back, decided not to release him, so he remains on the initial 53-man roster instead. As well. And then not listed the special teams guys. You got Jason Sanders kicking, Jake Bailey punting, and Blake Ferguson, who is obviously doing the snapping there. And get this off the screen. So that is what I've got for my initial roster kind of breakdown. It was quick, but still 15 minutes is a little bit long. So I will wrap it up there. But we'll be back most every day leading up to something. I got season predictions coming. We got week one preview stuff coming. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. I think I got a giveaway pretty soon here that I've been holding on to, waiting for the right time to release. So we'll be giving out the details on that as well. That's what I've got for today, though, Dolphins fans. And until next time, fins up.